properties, so heritage properties are actually governed by federal legislation. And heritage properties are what they are, literally denoted that because there is deemed value in the history of the importance of that home or structure. And maybe it's architectural, but sometimes it's actually who lived there or what happened there. The city that would, okay, the city doesn't, the city does not manage heritage properties very well. There's no support for properties that fall into disrepair, and if heritage is important to the community, we need to identify the assets and figure out a way to ensure they're safeguarded so they don't fall into danger. But there needs to be a balance between infill housing is kind of the example where we're going in and we're knocking down buildings potentially that are 80 years old or 100 years old. And there needs to be a balance between being forthright and honest about inventory lists and what's going to become a heritage property. And then once it's a heritage property, what's the proper support for that? Sometimes what happens is owners end up with properties that become heritage properties, and that creates limitations in terms of both renovation, building, and financing even. So there needs to be a balance and clearer direction from the City of Regina. If we're going to protect heritage properties, and I think there's value in heritage properties, then we need a clear formula and a clear format and plan so that if you're going to be entering into something like that or ownership of a heritage property, that those directions and guidelines are perfectly clear and they're not left up to argument and debate. Okay, I need another question. Ooh. Ooh. I have a question here about what you're going to do to control gangs, specifically in North Central. This is a serious issue in the City of Regina. It's a serious issue in the city, in several municipalities in our province, and I'm going to go back to supporting the Regina Police Service in what it is they need in order to combat this issue. Up until a few years ago, there was an actual provincial body that was looking at, that oversaw, where chiefs got together and oversaw organized crime that was operating in an organized, like, collaboratively, essentially, throughout several jurisdictions in the province. I think reinstating that may be something that could be addressed or brought up with the province to fund something like that. We were having some success as a province dealing with it because of that information sharing and that collaboration by the chiefs. We were able to address gang organizations that were operating in multiple jurisdictions. So that would be an example of a way to address some of that. But again, gangs are one of the things that our police service need our support in combating. I'm going to scroll through this. There's a question about what do you see as the components of an anti-poverty strategy? The city currently has a housing strategy and has built some housing to reduce homelessness. Okay, so a poverty strategy, when we're talking about building a strategy in the first year of being mayor, so next year in 2021, coming up with that strategy. Poverty, the issues that fall under poverty are mental health, addictions, homelessness is only one component, food insecurity, childhood education. I talked about keeping our young children at risk, busy and safe and involved in things. That's a little bit of it, that early childhood education component, making sure that things like that may be available to them. And economic development actually is one of the components of an anti-poverty strategy. We go back to the idea of people and jobs. When our economy is really strong, poverty is reduced. But it also provides people hope, like that idea that I may be able to go get a job that elevates me above hand-to-mouth feeding or that food insecurity issue that we have. Those are the elements of an anti-poverty strategy that the city would look at addressing. And I think what's important is we have a lot of amazing community organizations that are delivering on a bunch of those different issues. They're alleviating some of the issues for some of our citizens, not all of them, clearly. But we need to actually coordinate with our community organizations better in terms of delivering to our vulnerable citizens, and then coming up with a solution that better addresses or maybe targets poverty better, and coordinating back into with the province, building that relationship in terms of how to target funding and directing the programs that they already provide in a more effective way. One of the ways I think we're going to need to do that is we're going to need to start collecting data. We need to start making and collecting data on the individuals that are experiencing those issues and track it over time. I think that's going to actually assist us 5 years down the road and 10 years down the road in terms of determining what programs are working and what's not. In the absence of data, I mean, almost all things, you need metrics, you need benchmarks in order to determine, again, what's working, what's not working, and investing where you're having successes. Sorry. What do you think are our city's most inefficient aspects of their operations, and how could you help change the structure and culture with the City Hall to be stronger? Okay, there's several questions here. What do I think some of our most inefficient aspects of operations? Permit and planning has gotten better, and I think there's probably some additional work that can be done there in terms of getting out of the way. And this is not about the people. I want to stress this again. We have some pretty amazing people that work at the City of Regina who actually want those processes and policies to get out of their way so they're more efficient at their jobs. There's an idea too that there may be duplication of services or roles that are being done because departments are acting kind of more on a silo basis, which isn't good for anybody, and in fact probably frustrates the city workers more than anybody. The culture issue, I'm going to tell you that culture starts at the top. A lack of leadership, a lack of positivity, a lack of championing in our city and wanting to be the best at everything we do, and building consensus among council is incredibly important. Creating a vision and a strategy to achieve that vision. And I'll tell you again what the vision of the City of Regina is. It's to be the most sustainable, beautiful, vibrant, and inclusive city in the country of Canada. And I think it's a fantastic vision. But there needs to be a strategy to achieve those things, and you actually have to address them with intention. And if council was able to come together, if they felt like they had leadership and they were able to come together and deliver a strategy and a vision, a strategy to execute towards that vision, I think everybody at city that works at the city then plays into that vision, and it has to start there, and it has to be clear, and then our city employees need to be empowered to achieve those things. Sorry, they moved it on me. Sorry. Nope. Again, someone should not leave me alone with this computer. How would your efficiency review be different from the past core services review? Again, efficiency is about policy, process, procurement, and people. And freeing up time is how do we do what we're currently doing more efficiently? How do we take away duplication? How do we remove roadblocks and barriers from someone doing their job in a more straightforward fashion? Core services review has to do with this department does this department does this. It's more of an assignment of job duties. So literally, you're looking at the silos that exist in terms of who does what and how. And I think what ends up happening is you lack a collaborativeness within city departments interdepartmentally. And that's actually a breakdown in efficiency as well. So that's kind of a little bit of the difference. have I considered that some of the city's financial difficulties from many years of zero increases and cuts in revenue sharing and grants in lieu of taxes by the provincial government? You know, when we track the revenue sharing that comes from the province of Saskatchewan, actually in the last 8 years, it has pretty much done nothing but increase year over year. And there was one dip, and now it's gone back up again. So I don't know that that's actually true, but I'm open. If someone has the data to prove me wrong, but when we map it out on a trend map, it has done nothing but increase. And I think the thing about property taxes is that, so there's something called the municipal price index. There, I'm going to nerd out on you. So consumers, we have a CPI, we all know it as inflation, and consumer price index this year I think is going up 0.4% or 0.5%, partially due to COVID. Everything's sort of, there's lots of things that are kind of that go into that bread basket, that basket of goods that creates the CPI is being kept kind of low. But municipalities buy different things than a consumer does. Municipalities buy gravel, they buy aggregates, they buy oil, they buy gas. They buy different things than a consumer does. And the cost of those things have a tendency to go up. And so property taxes sometimes increase just to cover off the cost of goods that the municipality has to purchase. And in terms of, if I go back to $1 billion infrastructure deficit, that is built up over years. I'm going to give you an example. The Brant Center was built in 1974 or 1975. Okay? The Lawson was built in 1974 and 1975. The Regina Police Service Station was built in 1977-78. The Regina Public Library was built in 1962. These are just a few facilities that are city-owned, either recreational or professional facilities that provide quality of life or services to the city of Regina. And you all know what the condition of all of those properties are. That's a long-term plan. And the absence of an existing long-term plan, I'm not going to lie, it kind of blows my mind. We know they're on the list. We know they're on the list of capital projects to be done, but nothing's been done in 8 years. And we talk about preliminary design work or preliminary studies. The Regina Revitalization Initiative is 8 years old, and you drive by your Taylor Field site or your yard site, and what you'll see are new chain link fences to keep people off of them. So those are things that should have already been on the books. Design work should have already been done or planned, because it takes years to build those things. And so, and I know the Brant Center quite well, having worked on the board of the Exhibition Association. And, you know, we probably have 5 more years. You know, you could spend a couple $1 million and maybe get 10 years out of it. But in those same 10 years, something probably needs to happen with the Lawson, and something should happen with the Regina Public Library, and something is potentially happening, or it's going to happen with the police service building, as it should. But this should have all been mapped out, and I think that's a commitment I'd be completely happy to make through both public engagement and just proper city planning, that when you look at multi-year budgets and you peg it out 3 to 5 years, you're going to know as a city, this is the next project we're undertaking. When that one's done, you're going to undertake the next one. And you're going to look for federal funding, and you're going to look for provincial funding, and then you just leave yourself enough nimbleness or adaptability in order to back away if you have to. Oh, as a mayor who has not been on council, how would you build relationship and consensus with the rest of councillors? That's a great question. So as the chair of the board of directors at the Exhibition Association, so REAL is a municipally owned organization, and there's a great governance process to apply and interview process to get on the board of directors. And when I became chair of the board of directors and Tim Reed became the CEO, basically within a couple months of my becoming chair, we made a really conscientious effort to meet one-on-one with each of the individual councillors and the mayor, and to talk about what was happening. The way we saw it, our fiduciary responsibility was to operate city assets. And there's almost, when you think about it, when you add in the stadium, mainly the 103-acre site, that is the Exhibition Association Limited site. It's almost $1 billion worth of civic assets. And we felt it vitally important to meet with each of them, to talk about what it is that our learnings about the process and the circumstances and the opportunities that were available on the site. And so I already did this essentially